Welcome to the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Age, director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. And today we're at the lamp bench where what should be a simple lamp rewire is complicated by a missing critical part. Now this is a nice little desk lamp, probably from the 80s. Has a thumb switch on the cord, which is fairly old just because the color has faded so much. And it's supposed to be adjustable. And there's a key missing here which holds the whole thing together. On the bottom we've got a sticker that says made in Taiwan, Republic of China, which again makes it late 70s, 80s, something like that. And that's the kind of style that you could find in just about any kind of department store, something like that. If you were looking for a little lamp like this. The fitter made to hold a glass shade, that's loose, the socket is loose, and again, the arm is loose. Now originally some kind of a key with a bolt on it went through this hole and went into these threads, which appear to still be good. The worst case scenario on something like this is the threads here being stripped out, which makes the job a lot more complicated than it needs to be. There's a little boss right here which catches this piece so that that's as far down as it can go and you don't have to worry about banging your shade into your lamp. So this is going to take some fabrication, some kind of cobbling, and I'm going to have to look at all my little junk drawers and stuff like that and see if I've got some ideas. What I'm looking for is a piece of brass tubing as small as possible. We'll still let this bolt go through it, and I think that's it. Now the simplest solution would be simply to use this screw which fits these threads in here, put some kind of a large knob on the end of it, and that would work pretty well. It's probably what they had originally, but that's going to put a lot of stress on these threads. In and out, every time it's tightened, it gets pulled on, and eventually it'll wear out, strip out, which is what I was worried about when I first saw this lamp. So I'm going to avoid that problem by making the screw permanently attached, cut this head off, and then fabricate some kind of a nut that holds this all together. The arm is pretty close to the screw, so I'm going to use this brass tubing as a spacer to hold the nut out just a little bit. Now that's so I can use a screwdriver to put this screw in the lamp without having to worry about damaging the threads with a pair of pliers or anything like that. Always put blue thread lock on any threaded fasteners, bolts, screws, or nuts, especially on this application because I don't want this screw coming loose. Now I have to find a nut to go on here, and I've got quite a lot of options. Now what I have to do is find something that matches the rest of the lamp that has these threads on the inside. And I'm going to have to make something. Of course, if you work on lamps long enough, you will accumulate lots of little pieces of hardware, and none of these are going to work. Fortunately, I have some of these. And these are little balls that are made to go on the ends of beaded chain. Snap one of these keepers on it, holds it on. And also, fortunately, this little hole in the bottom down here is just the right size for creating these threads that fits this screw. Now what I have to do is take this tool called a tap, made for cutting threads, push it in here and turn it so it'll cut away all the brass and make the threads. And the first problem there is, how do I hold something little and round like this? And when you're going to be cobbling stuff together, cobble well. Drop it in here. Got a brass rod that fits down in the hole, and that helps me eyeball when I've got this thing straight. And then clamp this in the vise, and it'll hold everything just nice. Alright, now with the hard part taken care of, we can get on to the mundane wiring of the lamp. That begins with removing the bottom. Which is held on with 2 screws. Most of the time you find this piece just glued on, but the bottom on this lamp is actually a metal plate with the felting glued to it. And we've got an iron weight, which that also adds some age to it. That puts the age of this lamp into the 80s, maybe even the 70s, because into the 90s and after 2000, this would actually be just a plastic piece filled with cement or just sand. And we've got wire connectors here, which is a little unusual. Pull these apart and I see that at the end of this piece, these connectors are tinned, which I'll speak more about later, but it indicates that this wire, everything on the outside, is part of a cord set, and that to wire the lamp, they had an extra piece of wire to go up the pipe. Now I can see why they probably wanted an extra piece of wire here. It's because we've got a sharp 90-degree bend going from here into the main pipe. Not really happy about that, but it's not something we can't handle. The reason the socket is so floppy and loose here is that where the mounting screw went into the base is broken off. The screw is missing, not too unusual. And the next task is to get this wire past this 90-degree bend, which is something we've handled plenty of times before. Now I want to avoid the connection in the base, so I'm going to start right here and run this up the pipe, and then use this wire in here to pull the cord through that little short piece right there. Now there always needs to be some way to prevent the wire from being pulled out of the socket in case someone trips over the lamp in the night. And in this type of lamp, it's easiest to put a little simple overhand knot right here in the base, and that will prevent that problem from ever happening. I'm going to need a lot of slack to be able to wire the arm. And I hope this is enough, but I can always come back and get some more. Now the plan is to attach the new cord to the old wire and use it to pull it through. And there's no reason to pull all of this through the arm, so that comes off. Now I'm going to solder the cord to the old wire, and this is not an electrical connection. It has two requirements. One is it has to be strong, and the other is that it has to be small, because it's got to go around that corner right there, and a solder joint is pretty rigid compared to the wire that it's joining. Before I start pulling, I'm going to try and daub a little paste wax down in that hole. Make that wire go around that corner a little easier. And then using the vise as a third hand, start working at one end, pulling at the other, and just keep this thing going until it's all the way through. Well, it went around that corner with relatively little effort. And there we are. Now I have the fitter tightened down properly. This is the old socket. It can't be reused. I'm going to replace it with this one, slightly different, called a hickey socket. This little bracket here on the bottom is called a hickey, and no one knows why. It may have been invented by Lorenzo J. Hickey, but there's no records of that. But the advantage is that this little bracket can be put on first, and then the socket wired, and it gets pulled down. For very convenient when you've got to put a light socket down inside a cup like this. And before the hickey goes on, it gets more of the blue goo, because the fact is, threads on lights and lamps and that sort of stuff are fairly lightweight. And if you try to get them as tight as you can in order to prevent them from ever coming loose, you're more than likely to strip something. And I prefer the blue goo. It's much better than lock nuts or any sort of thing like that. About 10-15 minutes, that stuff will harden, and then it will be very, very difficult to get it loose through normal use. Changing a light bulb or something like that is never going to make it come off. Now the more about tinning that I promised earlier. Lamp wire is multi-stranded. That means we've got several dozen of these little fine wires. And the National Electrical Code dictates that multi-strand wires cannot be put under screw terminals. You do that with a multi-strand wire, it splays out, it gets loose, loose gets hot, hot means it gets looser, and then it starts to burn. Not a good practice, probably won't set your house on fire, but it will definitely shorten the life of the lamp. Now, in order to turn multi-stranded wire into single strand, we tin it. And that basically means simply putting a drop of solder on the tip so that all those wires are fused together, and when you put them under the screw, you can tighten it down nice and snug. And it only takes just a little bit at the tip. If you do the entire wire, then you're going to have to bend it with a pair of pliers to get it around the screw terminal. Not a big deal, but it makes it a little bit more work. Now, the next part of this sermon, lamp wire that is sold like this in two pieces that are stuck together, One side has smooth insulation, one side has a ridge on it. If you look at the socket, one side is brass colored, one side is silver colored. The side with the ridges always goes under the silver screw. And the wire also always goes clockwise around the screw so that when you tighten the screw, it will pull it down tight instead of pushing it out. And you fiddle with it until you get it down underneath the screw head and then tighten it down. Now we work the wire back in the opposite direction, which again means getting it around that 90-degree bend, which is a combination of pushing and pulling, creating a little bit of slack at that corner and then pulling it out past the corner. And once you got the wire pulled all the way down, you get the socket lined up on the hickey without sticking your head under the camera. And try to drop this little screw down the hole. Once that's all lined up, tighten it down and the job is just about done. Just want to get that nice and tight. Now we can put this back on the lamp. Now I still need to install the cord switch, but the customer hasn't decided where they want that right now, so that'll have to wait. But we can still test it. The swing arm works fairly well. It lights up. And that's really all you can expect out of a lamp. So, this is Bronze Age for the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. Thank you for watching this video. We really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. Please comment any questions. I'll respond to all. Don't get that many, so it's pretty easy. Again, thank you for watching.